This is Matt Brown here at from East Coast 2 at 2016 Awesome Con. I'm here with Matthew Dow Smith, writer and artist for the Doctor Who comic and now currently with the X-Files comic book. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
Good. Now, you're the first guest that we've ever had be interviewed twice on our site. Is that probably one of the biggest honors you probably have ever had?
I mean, it really is. I mean, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to top this, and frankly, I'm putting a lot of thought into it right now, but I haven't come up with anything.
Okay. Well, if you do, definitely let us know. I'm going to try. Last time we talked was at Regeneration Who in March 2015. So I'm going to try to ask you a little bit different questions than from back then. First one, I know before we didn't really get into how you got into the industry. How did you break into the industry?
Wow. Well, I've been drawing comics now for 23 years, and that's a long time ago. It's hard to remember.
Okay.
But really, I mean, that's the joke answer. The real answer is, I mean, I was working in a record store. Wait, sorry, let me rephrase that. I was working in a CD store, though I'm old enough to remember records. And, you know, this is a bizarre story, but a guy comes in, he's looking for somebody, they weren't there, he had come to the wrong store, but while I was waiting for his friend to show up, we were talking about stuff, and turns out he was a comic book inker, and I was like, I actually like him, I'm a comic book artist too, I'm trying to break in the industry, and I had my sketchbook with me, I showed it to the guy, and he liked the stuff, and like, helped me get into comics. He introduced me to my first editor at Caliber Comics back in 1993. Sadly, he's passed away since, but his name was Jim Royal, and he was just an inker, and he just randomly came into my music store.
So I guess the premise is always be prepared, I guess, because you never know what's going to happen.
And I say that as somebody who I have to look at a lot of people's sketchbooks, and I'll be honest, I'm not always in the mood to do it, but because of that moment with Jim, I will look at your sketchbook, and I'm probably going to regret saying that publicly now. But it's true. I mean, that's how I got in. I'll take the time and look at your stuff.
Right. At what point did you actually think that you could actually make a living doing this? A lot of people draw, make comics on the side, but when did you think
2 years ago. No, I mean, the truth is when you're starting out, you think, oh yeah, this will be easy, no problem. I'll make lots of money. You know what? And the reality is very, very different. I always intended to do this full time, and I mostly have done it full time. Though I did, for a long time, I kept a part-time job at a bookstore, which I recommend. I mean, I was working full time in comics at that point, but it's nice to have an excuse to get out of the house, which really, really helps. But really, it's only been I've left comics a few times because I just wasn't making enough money doing it, and it's really only been the last couple of years where I could do things like, pay my taxes on time and things like that. Which is a little crazy considering how long I've done it. But.
You're currently working on the X-Files comic book. Now, this past year, the TV show actually came back. Has that really caused an increase in reader or viewership for your comic, or has there been any correlation between the two?
I try to pay as little attention to sales as possible, because if you pay attention to sales, you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly has increased the interest in the comic book, but I think it's also, the comic book that we started, that Joe Harris, our writer, started 3 years ago now. I think that created a lot of interest in the X-Files again, which is great. And, we sort of jokingly take credit for the return of the show. But it's only kind of half a joke. I mean, it did, suddenly everyone remembered how much they liked the X-Files. So hopefully they'll come back and do another season of the revival too. So, and in the meantime, we're more than happy to keep doing the comic book.
Now, a lot of times when there's a TV show and a comic book, they limit what you can actually do, like using new characters on the show. Did the TV show actually, put any limits on you guys when you're doing your comic?
Not really. I mean, Joe has dealt with that mostly on the writing side of things. So that stuff's all worked out before I ever have to touch it. But it seems like they have given us a lot of freedom, and I know I'm now writing a young adult spin-off of the X-Files that I'm co-writing with Jody Hauser called X-Files Origins, and they really, I haven't had any problems. They just kind of left us to do our thing. They sign off on everything and they read everything through, and we try not to screw anything up.
Right.
But yeah, they really have kind of left us alone, and I know in my thing, I'm introducing several new wrinkles to the X-Files mythology, things that people don't know about that will change kind of how you see a few things. And they've let me go completely nuts. But I just finished the second issue, so maybe that'll all change. But yeah, they've been really easy to work with.
How do you think we've seen Doctor Who crossover with Star Trek? How do you think a Doctor Who, I'm sure you've already thought about it, what do you think of a Doctor Who X-Files crossover?
That would be almost completely impossible. I think people would love it just as they love the Doctor Who Star Trek crossover. And believe me, I'm totally down for it if that's what they want to do.
Right.
But it's hard, because they're completely different universes with different things. I'm actually sort of famously grumpy about crossovers.
Okay.
Because they're often very, very different universes that really kind of shouldn't coexist.
Right.
But it's Doctor Who. You can kind of do whatever you want.
Right.
You can do whatever kind of story you want because it's such a flexible kind of setup. So if someone wants me to do a Doctor Who X-Files thing, that's fine, as long as I get to pick which Doctor it is.
And which Doctor would you pick?
Well, if it's not Tom Baker, it's Sylvester McCoy.
Okay.
Though I would love to draw Capaldi at some point because he's just got such a great face.
Right.
And since I use a lot of shadows and a lot of black, he's got my perfect Doctor Who costume. It's just black.
Right. So I was looking online and I saw on makeuseof.com, which I'm sure everybody goes to that website, but they listed you as one of the top 10 talented comic book artists that you should follow on Twitter. I didn't know if you knew that. Seriously?
No, I had absolutely no idea.
You are listed as one of the top 10.
Okay.
My question was, how do you utilize Twitter and other social media for your artwork and your career?
I make bad jokes with my wife. Twitter is interesting, and a lot of people, I do recommend you kind of sit down and decide how you're going to use these sort of platforms because, they're tricky. I think a lot of people forget that you're not just talking to your buddies. What you write on there can be read by everybody. So I try very hard to keep it positive and not be negative and not start fights with people and things like that. And frankly, I think kind of everybody should probably be doing that. But I like to talk about the things that I'm really enthusiastic about, which not a huge surprise is usually Doctor Who. I talk about the things that I really like. I talk when I see an artist. There's an artist, actually one of the Doctor Who artists now, Rachel Stott, who I've never met in person. I only know her from Twitter. But I'd seen a bunch of her covers and was tweeting about how great they were. And, now we're friends on Twitter and things like that. So it's a really good platform for, telling people about what you're doing. Because I do things like X-Files or Doctor Who or what I'm doing at DC right now, Batman 66 meets Steed and Peel, you're limited about what you can show. So, I do little sketches and things just to kind of keep people interested in following me. But yeah, a lot of it is me making jokes with my wife. And it's usually, to be honest, my wife making jokes about me.
And a lot of pictures of your cats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my wife's cat is like Satan incarnate.
Okay.
So I like to post pictures so they know if anything happens to me.
Who's responsible?
Who's responsible?
Okay.
Exactly.
So as we knew in our past interview, we knew you're a lifelong Doctor Who fan. So I want to get your thoughts a little bit about the past season. How do you think the past season went with Peter Capaldi?
Well, from my Twitter feed, it was mixed, but I loved it. I thought that this was one of the best seasons yet. I loved the return of the cliffhangers. I thought that was great. I think it's always funny because Moffat is so good at constructing one-off, solid single episodes. But his two-parters are great, and I think everybody really upped their game this season. And even things that you thought were one-offs were really two-parters and things like that. I loved it. I love Capaldi as the Doctor, and as an older Doctor Who fan, maybe that's not a huge surprise, because anyone who's younger than me just should not be the Doctor. But they've all been great.
Right.
I love Capaldi. I love Jenna Coleman. It was funny because I saw a lot of sort of people not all that wild about Clara, to be honest. I thought she was great, and I've seen a lot of people with what happens with her in this season. I think Moffat built an entire season around trolling Doctor Who fans, and I think he pulled it off really, really well. And it was I don't know, maybe I'm just too enthusiastic about it, but I really enjoyed this season a lot.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this season more than his first season. I think he was trying to get into the role, but this second season, I think he really found his niche of what kind of a Doctor he is.
Yeah, and I think the first season he did was clearly like, here's a couple stories to kind of let's start to play with the idea of who he's going to be as the Doctor. But I think they hit their stride fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But this season, I thought it was great. And again, as an old school Who fan, it was great to see the cliffhangers again. Because that's such a part of the Doctor Who experience.
Same way with me, yeah.
Yeah, but it sucks now because, as a kid, when they were rerunning him on PBS, they would rerun it like the next day. Or over and over again, or you didn't have to wait a week.
Right.
And that sucks.
There's always been a controversy. I know Moffat's always been dancing around about it. Should the Doctor ever be a woman? So what are your complete thoughts? I'm sure you've thought about it.
Oh, yeah, I've thought about it. I've been asked about it before, and I'm adamantly I don't care. It doesn't matter whether he should be or not, he will be. And the question will just be how long it will take for that to happen. Moffat has perfectly trolled the season again. He trolled the fact that is possible. And it's going to happen. And I think it'll be hard for some fans. As an older fan, honestly, when they first started batting the idea around, I was kind of like, well, that'll be weird. And now I actually kind of want to see what they'll do. Moffat, I think, would have done something very interesting, but he's leaving, new showrunners coming in, we'll see. I don't think it'll happen right away, but it's gonna happen, and we kind of have to deal with that.
Right.
So.
Have you ever got into or listened to any of the Doctor Who Big Finish audio adventures at all?
I am massively obsessed with the Big Finish audios.
I am, same too.
I'm just huge fan, and it's kind of the joke among Doctor Who comic book creators is everybody sort of secretly dreams that Stephen Moffat's going to call him up and say, hey, will you write an episode? Which is never going to happen. My thing is that Big Finish will call me and ask me to write a Doctor Who audio play, because I'm a huge audio guy. I grew up with the Goon Show and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I love audio plays as a format for story. And I'm a Doctor Who fan. Big surprise, I'm going to be really into it. So I have like a story in the back of my head where if Nick ever calls me up and says, hey, like he's ever going to do that, I got the story ready to pitch for him. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely love them. And it's nice. It's nice to hear those older doctors again, and especially doctors like Colin Baker, who kind of got shortchanged. They've done a brilliant job of expanding his run of the Doctor. And how else are you going to do that? You can't do that on TV.
Right.
So it's great.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant getting into them, but once I did, I sometimes can't get out of my car because I don't want to leave.
And we're getting into them late, so there's a lot of them to catch up on.
Right.
But I am strapped to a comic book. Well, I'm strapped to my art table 16 hours a day.
True.
I got a lot of time for Big Finish.
Yep.
They have a lot of my X-Files money.
So what are some new projects you're working on that are coming out pretty soon?
Well, I'm the regular artist still on the X-Files. We just relaunched it with the same team. Joe Harris is writing it. My fantastic colorist Jordi Belair is staying on to color it. Issue 2 just came out. Issue 3 is coming up, and the new story is sort of set with the revival. I'm also now, like I mentioned, co-writing 2 young adult spin-offs of the X-Files. There's a young Mulder and a young Scully book, and they're actually being released. It's being released as a flip book, which I think is like the coolest thing ever, because I'm a nerd. But yeah, and then also, as I mentioned, I'm drawing the Batman '66, so the Adam West Batman show meets John Steed and Emma Peel, the original Avengers from British television. I'm drawing that with Ian Eddington as the writer, and huge surprise, Jodie Belair coloring me again. And I'm really excited about that one as a Doctor Who fan. I grew up very much loving things like the Avengers, so that's kind of crazy. And as an American growing up in the '70s who liked comic books, I've seen a few episodes of the Batman show, and I've got them on like 3 different versions of media. So that's great. And then after that, we'll kind of see if I survive this period of my career. So.
I forgot to ask you, here at AwesomeCon, they're having Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman here on Sunday. Are you going to be in line with the rest of us waiting?
I mean, I actually seriously consider doing it because I just am such a massive fan. And I decided against it mainly because if I do that, I'm going to get nerd all over them, and it's going to be really embarrassing. And it's probably better if they think, oh, that Matthew Dow Smith guy, didn't he do some comics? He seems like an interesting guy, as opposed to, who was that weird dude who was like, oh my god, I can't wait to draw you. Yeah, so it's probably better if I just stay away. But if the opportunity arrives, I mean, obviously I would love to meet him. I'm a huge fan of both of their work and think they've just been absolutely fabulous on the show. I'm actually, I'm sorry to see Clara go, and it sounds like maybe relatively soon Capaldi might leave, and I'll be sorry for that too, but I say that about every Doctor. And then a new Doctor comes along and they're brilliant.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Matt, thanks for spending some time with us. Hopefully maybe next year we'll get our 3rd part of the Matthew Dow Smith interview.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And then we'll get into, I don't know what we'll get into that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're just going to have to just talk about Doctor Who for an hour or something.
Hey, sounds good to me, man. I appreciate it. Have a great con.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Thank you.